Hello, fellow followers, and welcome to FanZcene. And today I have for you some really cool people, Cullen Bunn and Blacky Shepherd, who are here to talk about their new book, Reanimator, The Eternal Lie. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Good to be here with you guys. Now, this book is still on Indiegogo right now, coming from Dynamite Entertainment, right?
Yes.
It is.
Yes, and it's Reanimator, The Eternal Lie. It's the continuation of H.P. Lovecraft's Herbert West, The Reanimator. So how did this idea come to you guys, and how did you guys bring it about?
Well, this is
Colin and then Black.
Yeah, this is a book that it's been in the works for a couple of years now. It's not, it feels like a couple of years, at least a year, right, Blackie?
Yeah, I was going to say 20 years, but
yeah, right. So it's been in the works for a while. It was a project. Blackie and I had worked on a number of books together, including a book for Dynamite called Vampirella versus Reanimator. And I was talking to the folks at Dynamite about doing a new book. We were talking about doing a new Reanimator book. And I had this idea that if I was going to do one, I wanted to do one that kind of erased all the other Reanimator stories and kind of took it back to formula. And we started talking about artists, and immediately Blackie jumped to mind as since I'd worked with him on a Herbert West story before, he immediately jumped to mind as the guy for this. And I gave him a call, and the rest is, as they say, crowdfunding. And
and I saw the trailer on Indiegogo and everything, and the artwork looks amazing, Blackie. I mean, tell us a little bit about how that came all about.
Well, I worship at the altar of Bernie Wrightson, right? Anybody that looks at my work can tell that I bite off Bernie as often as I possibly can, right? And so I really wanted to try to dial that up for this project. Just mainly because this is my first chance at getting to draw a lot of these locations and monsters and that kind of thing. And so I wanted to do something a little bit special. I wanted to put a lot more work into this art than I had in some of the previous stuff. And so, I spent a lot of time not just drawing the detail, all the little bricks and rocks and scales and everything, but mainly I did a lot of research, and trying to look at architecture from that part of the world. When it came time to draw a monster, I tried to research some real world component, so that there was a credibility to the monster design, and I really just wanted to focus on trying to give the work as much atmosphere as I possibly could,
And from what I've seen of it looks great. It does look very atmospheric, and it gives you that H.P. Lovecraft feel to it. Because I love H.P. Lovecraft, and Reanimator. I know he didn't much care for it, but I actually like the story.
Cullen, I think I might have heard you say that. I was never aware of that it wasn't one of his favored works, which blows my mind because it's so good.
Exactly. It just was something he wrote for like a pulp magazine that he just did for money. I mean, that's what H.P. Lovecraft did. But he wrote great stories, and I love Reanimator. And now, like I said, this book, though, this looks very interesting, very intriguing. The artwork is beautiful. And can you tell us a little about where the story is going to go, Colin?
Yeah, well, it's this is a story. Like I said, it kind of takes Reanimator back to formula. So while a lot of the comic book interpretations of Reanimator have modernized the story, this is taking it back to the 1920s. It takes place just a few years after the events of the original short story. And it kind of takes that. The idea is Herbert West returns to the story. He's found out that his formula has been stolen by nefarious forces, and he has to retrieve that formula, get it back from them, before they quite literally unleash, hell on Earth. They have very sinister plans for the formula that I don't want to spoil, but they. It's awful enough that Herbert West, who is not a heroic figure in any way, shape, or form, is cast as the hero because the forces he is up against are that much worse than he is.
That sounds good. And like I said, this is still an Indiegogo out there for everybody who wants to get in on this. And I believe I'm going to back it myself because it looks really, really good. And I cannot wait for this. And I'm digging the little pin you guys are giving out with the Indiegogo, the syringe with this.
Yeah.
So there's the enamel pin, and then there's the pen. Are you talking? Pen,
I'm talking about the syringe pin, yeah. and the enamel pin looks cool too, though. It all looks good.
Yeah, but the syringe pin really has something going for it.
Yeah, that sells it. It sells it. And it's just so people also know, like they're saying, they're going back to the original story here, not Jeffrey Combs' Reanimator, which is great. I absolutely love. I'd love, but it's pretty cool to go that you guys are going back to the original source material and getting into like Arkham and all these places from that time period, which, like I said, you can see the background here. That's your art from the book there. It's just looks amazing.
Yeah, it's and this is getting, we're definitely the Herbert West Reanimator, the short story, wasn't connected to the Cthulhu mythos in any way. But in this case, with this comic, we're doing what we can. We're meshing those together a little more obviously.
Yeah, that's something I noticed too, because I was going to ask you guys about that. Is how are you going to connect it to like his interdimensional stories and all that stuff, like with Cthulhu and all that? So you answered that question before I asked it, so I'm looking forward to that. And what was it like to draw some of these creatures and things?
It was a blast. I've read Lovecraft for my whole life, since I was probably too young to be reading that kind of stuff. And so, these monsters have lived in my head for a long time, and aside from a couple of exceptions, I've never really drawn a whole lot of them, classically, at least in my comics work, I've either drawn, a monster that was well defined, like in Pumpkinhead, the design was done,
Yeah.
And then, but when given the chance to realize these monsters that have lived in my head for a while, it was a lot of fun, and it was daunting. I have a problem sometimes as an artist getting started. Right. Once I'm started, I'm good. But the process of design is where I do a lot of my heavy lifting, because I probably get into my own head too much. Right. And so I want to think about justifications for anatomy. Like, why would it have that particular claw there? Or why would it, have a throbbing membrane on its chin? Or, and so those things, and that is what I did for this. I went and looked at, I'm not giving much away because I think there's images of it already, but they're the deep ones, right? And so I definitely wanted to put my own spin on the deep ones, but mainly by way of going and researching what those animals as I perceived them would look like. I wanted to make them very chitinous. I wanted them to be very arthropodic, if that's a word, crustacean like, I didn't want them to just be fish guys, and so when I got the chance to draw some of these monsters, it very much became an exercise of trying to find that thing about them that made them horrific, but tie it somehow to the real world. One of the things that I do in my art, and specifically in this project, is I try to draw with credibility and realism. I'm not a very stylized artist.
Well, I'm telling you, from what I've seen and everybody out there, it looks great. It looks really great, and I'm looking forward to it. And like I don't know, it's just something about the HP Lovecraft world that just like seeps into your brain when you read his stories. They're just so entertaining and so scary, and the endings are never what you expect, and you never get the happy ending of it. So I'm looking forward to see what you guys have created and how you take his vision into the direction you guys want to go into. And how many issues is this going to be?
So what's crowdfunding right now is the first part of a bigger story. It's at least one more book after this, assuming this campaign is successful enough.
Mm-hmm.
The success of this, this issue has been funded, so it's a given. But the success of this campaign will determine if we're going to be able to continue that story into the next part, which Blacky and I both want to do. So it's at least one more part. I kind of envision it as 2 or 3 more parts after this, but we need, we at least want to get to the second part. So the book that's being crowdfunded is a 40-page one-shot. And it's, we continue it on into another one, assuming we get enough support and backing to get to that point.
There's a suitably apocalyptic story being told with this, right? So the stakes of this, I'll tell you, this sounds like I'm just, blowing smoke up the skirt of the project and up Bunn's skirt because I'm part of the project. But genuinely, when I read the script, I was so hyped up. Like every page got me more and more hyped. And then when you get to the last page of it, I was just I was immediately like, okay, how do we get guaranteed to make the next part of this? Because it's gonna be so rad, right?
Yeah.
And then, when you think about, okay, so you got the first part that ends where it ends, and then we got the second part that will take the story to maybe the conclusion of that first arc. But like Cullen says, it leads into a bigger story that takes the situations that are germinated in this first volume and second volume, hopefully, and really expands it out to something that, 4 or 5 volumes in, this could be something that really, has, a giant vision behind it, and I'm dying to see that, just as a fan, I just want to read it, like even if it doesn't get funded, I'm going to see how much Bunn will charge me to just write it out.
I hope it gets funded because like I said, from everything I've heard from you guys and I've seen on the Indiegogo and the images and the story, I've got to back this book myself because I got to read it. I got to know what it's all about, and I really do hope you guys get big funding and everything and can continue the story because you just sold it even more for me. I'm gonna be honest, you sold it for me even more, and I cannot wait to see what you guys have come up with on this. It's really piqued my interest. Yeah, it's really piqued my interest.
We got that one, Blacky. We got the one.
Yeah. And to be honest, it'll probably be the first book I've bought in many, many years because I haven't bought a lot in a while. Because I don't know, I just kind of fell out, and I've always been trying to look at a way to get back in to comics and graphic novels, and this just might do it because I absolutely love H.P. Lovecraft and his story and his vision, and to see other people take it and try to expand on it and take it in a different direction, but keep it to with his vision. That interests me.
So first, I kind of agree with you. I fell out of comics in the 90s, especially superhero comics. I just lost kind of interest. I always kind of paid attention, but by and large, I wasn't in it. It was horror comics that got me back into comics, and I started really, really reading a lot of horror comics, a lot of science fiction comics, getting to work in horror comics is it's the best possible of all worlds for me. The thing that I'm most interested in is that, kind of like Cullen said, what we're doing is we're making a truly Lovecraftian story, stripped of any attempts to modernize or changed to suit a modern sensibility. What we're doing is we're building a direct sequel to his work and broadening it out, and that to me is interesting, not just because we're working on the project, but because it's something that you don't see much of. Anytime, even with the Reanimator movie, they updated it, they changed the tone, they made it kind of funny, they threw in some TNA, and anytime you see that, Color Out of Space, great movie, loved it.
Yes.
But again, they updated it, they modernized it, they changed a lot of things, and whereas with us, what we're trying to do is take exactly what was created and broaden it out on its own terms, and that to me is exciting. It's something that I would want to read even if I weren't working on it.
Yes, and I totally agree. Color Out of Space, Reanimator, From Beyond, they're all truly great H.P. Lovecraft adaptations, but they've all been modernized. So you don't always get the feel that his stories, when you read them, that you envision in your head. And so to see where you guys are going with this, it truly is great. Colin, do you have anything else on it?
I was going to say, they have to modernize them a little bit. And Lovecraft is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
To say the least.
Lovecraft is a very complicated individual, because I don't think it can be argued that he wasn't a raging racist.
Yeah.
He was a raging racist. And honestly, that racism transcended into the stories he wrote. And it's hard for me now. And I've been a fan of Lovecraft's writing since I was very young, just like Blacky. Over the years, I've come to realize racism is just ingrained in those stories. It's that fear of the unknown, the fear of the outsider, the fear of these alien beings coming in and destroying what you have. That's all rooted in his own xenophobia.
Yeah, and even to in the story of Reanimator, it's in the language. It's it's deeply rooted in all of Lovecraft's work.
So it's complicated.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very complicated.
Yours is, I don't have to like the guy that much, and that's a shift for me over the last 15 years or whatever. I don't have to like the guy, but it's impossible to argue that he didn't influence the horror genre in a massive way. I mean, he has influenced everything that's come after him. And I think about the Lovecraft Circle and the Cthulhu mythos, which is expanded, and now you have just hundreds and hundreds of creators and writers and artists and filmmakers and video game makers and tabletop role-playing game makers who are contributing to that mythos. And really, most of the stuff that people today think of as the Cthulhu mythos or Lovecraftian mythos, most of them have never read a Lovecraft story.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of it's defined by everything that's come after, and by all these other amazing creators and writers who've contributed to it after. So, they have to modernize a little bit. Yeah. I hope, for goodness sake, that, to some degree. But, our story is playing in the world of the Cthulhu mythos for sure, and is contributing to that mythology. And that's the but even when we started this, I was like, Black and I talked about how, Lovecraft is a complicated individual. And it's
very, very complicated.
To me, it's more about the Cthulhu mythos and contributing. It's almost like, if you really think about it, he created one of the first shared universes.
Yes, he did.
Because of the Circle. All these other, Robert E. Howard and Clark Ashton Smith, and all these other writers who started coming, Robert Bloch, these writers who would go on to make huge names for themselves, were playing in the arena of these Lovecraftian stories. And now we've, and it goes on today, with books like Lovecraft Country, and now TV shows like Lovecraft Country, and A True Detective. All of there's all these influences that are contributing in different ways to this larger mythology. And we're playing.
The only other time I can think of that anything close to that has happened is like with Tolkien, and the Lord of the Rings. Tolkien created Dungeons and Dragons for all intents and purposes. Right. He did it, I think, in the same along the same lines as what H.P. Lovecraft did, he did it intentionally. He intentionally created a sandbox that he wanted other people to play in. You know, that's about the only other time I can think of that has happened.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, it's interesting to me because I remember when I was first introduced to Lovecraftian fiction, it's because in 6th grade or 7th grade, I bought that copy of the Necronomicon, the little copy I bought at Walden Books, because everybody, you know, all these people were telling me how this guy knew what he was talking about. He was real. Just so we're clear.
For the kids at home.
And I remember saying this at a comic convention maybe 10 years ago. And as I was walking away, the guy that was standing there where I was really angry at me and saying, no, Lovecraft really knew what he was talking about. It's fiction.
It is fully.
It is.
Yeah.
You know,
in the grindcore scene, I'm a big metalhead, right? And there was a wave of these bands in the, I want to say, late 80s, early 90s, where, you know, they were taking on the names of, like, you know, Azathoth and, you know, and really, like, selling this like it was a religion, you know, and the whole deal. And a lot of them were pointing back to that black cover Necronomicon, you know, that it was even, if I remember correctly, wasn't that novel attributed to Abdul al-Hazred?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I still have a copy out in the hall because it's so you know, it was such a big part of my middle grade years.
Yeah.
But you know, and I remember even when I was working at a Walden Books years later, somebody came up and was like, I need the Necronomicon. And I was like, well, actually, you know, I managed the New Age section, so I knew we had one. I was like, oh yeah, I've got a copy. And, you know, I hand it to him and he's like, no, I need the real Necronomicon. And I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to rain on anybody's belief system to a degree. I mean, but
my nephew, he bought the Necronomicon from Amazon, right? And he was like, because
that statement alone is crazy.
Yeah. And he bought it from Amazon alone and everything. And he was like, he's heard the same stuff too, like you guys was talking about. And he read it, and I was waiting for him because I knew. And he was like, you know, this is just full of crap, right? And I was like, yeah, it is, but it's you know, we all know it is, but it's just so dang interesting.
Yeah, but I remember the guy was like, I was at a Walden Books in Philadelphia, and they had the real Necronomicon, and I read through it, and I was like, so let me just get this straight. You were in Philadelphia at a Walden Books.
Because everybody knows where you're going to get the downfall of mankind is going to be a chain bookstore, you know, in the city of brotherly love.
I mean, there's a story there. I mean,
it's like the scene in The Howling when they go in the bookstore when they're investigating and the nuns are there. He's looking, that's where they'll keep the Necronomicon for sure.
Right.
I mean, if I put a copy of the Necronomicon on a record player and play it backwards, do I get there's a demon? Do I summon demons? I don't know.
Actually, if you get the record of the Necronomicon and play it backwards, it plays the New Kids on the Block.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The right stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking of like In the Mouth of Madness. If that story has been told about as close as I've seen it get told is In the Mouth of Madness, where, you know, they are putting these apocalyptic tomes into mass production, throwing them in bookstores, and then, you know, people are getting their eyes crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is a great movie. The scene with Sam Neill, man, when he's got the crosses all over him, and then, oh, man, it's just, that is a brilliant movie. I love that movie.
And again, while working at Walden Books, when that movie was out, somebody came into the store asking for Sutter Kane books. Sutter Kane's not real. I mean, those books don't exist. I wish they did.
Oh,
yeah. A huge opportunity not releasing a series of Sutter Kane novels.
Hey, there's an ideal, man. Make a Sutter Kane graphic novel, man. That would be amazing. I would buy that and read the crap out of that. I tell you that much.
Somebody give me John.
John Carpenter, he has his own comic company. He should be doing that, to be honest.
Yeah, he should. That would, I mean, yeah. He could like work it into like where you're reading it and you think all of a sudden it's like you're in the real world, you know, like, wait, is this, That would be amazing.
I'm in the real world, even when I'm reading.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe what you're reading is happening. You think is actually happening. That would be just. I don't know. I'm not a writer, so.
I don't know. That sounded good. If you could pull that off, do it, man, because that's a feat there. You get that. Do it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Have you ever thought about maybe like taking the Reanimator from like Jeffrey Combs and like crossing universes with this Reanimator? That would be something interesting to have like the real Herbert West meet the Jeffrey Combs Herbert West.
I don't know that Jeffrey Combs would be up for that.
Yeah,
we'd
have to secure some licensing rights, and that would require the exchange of money and signed legal documents and the whole deal. And I don't know. Something tells me that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's just not possible.
Yeah,
this is fun.
I would love it, but no.
Oh yeah, but we'd like it if we had a say in it. But
yeah, that would be great.
One of my original ideas before we found out that they didn't and couldn't get the rights to any likenesses was I really wanted Barbara Crampton's character in the Vampirella versus Reanimator, but Snake Eyes on that role, unfortunately.
Happens. Barbara Crampton, her performance in From Beyond, man, that still wears at me to this day, man. It's like ingrained in my brain, especially the ending scene with her laugh.
Yeah,
man.
Everybody who was a teenage boy when they watched From Beyond.
Yeah.
Very few people can pull off that laughing into hysterical laughter, into screaming, into crying. That's got to be, as an actor, a very challenging, progression. And you don't see it get pulled off very often. Oddly enough, one of the other times that I've seen that done really well was by Ben Affleck, of all people, in Dogma. The scene where Jay shoots his wings off, and he's laughing, and then he realizes kind of what's happened, and he starts crying. I was like, wow, did that guy suddenly act? That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. You brought that up. I have to rewatch that now. That was one of his better performances for sure, definitely.
We can all agree he was the bomb in Phantoms.
He was.
The Phantoms is a great movie. I do agree with that. I really true. I literally bought that movie just because of his performance in that movie, because it is a really good story and a well-told movie.
It's great around like it's a thing, huh?
Yeah. Well, I tend to get excited when I keep saying great and amazing. Too much. Way too much.
In relation to Phantoms,
Well, yeah. I mean, Phantoms. I enjoyed the movie immensely.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if I could call it great.
Right.
But I have a different scale. It can be one of my favorite movies, and I can recognize it's not a great movie.
Yeah, that's what I say. I mean, I know I like a lot of bad, cheesy, bad movies that people say, you think that movie's great? I'd be like, yeah, to me it's great, even though I know it's really bad. I know it's not good.
I think Phantoms is a good movie. It's fine.
Yeah,
I don't know that I'd call it a masterpiece either, but I would also watch it before I would watch many a movie that people would call a masterpiece.
Yes. That's just me. I'm like a huge movie buff, so like if I see a movie and there's something about it that I like, I don't care how bad it is, I call it great. I got bad taste, honestly.
When you're a genre fan, you kind of get comfortable with liking things that maybe don't hit the mark every time or even the majority of times. There are movies that I like that are objectively terrible, but I love them. Like I'll watch it over and over and over again. There's a movie called Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. Have you ever seen it?
I do not believe I have seen that one.
If you get the chance, watch it. You're probably gonna hate it.
I'm already out because you already told me it's objectively terrible.
But man, there is something that is so good about it that I can watch it at the drop of a hat.
I'll check it out.
I'm getting older every second. And I have a limited amount of hours on this earth to dedicate to movies. Yeah. I love movies, but I can't dedicate time to a movie that someone says, This movie's objectively terrible, and you should watch it.
See, to me,
it's like when you're sitting across from someone eating something or drink, they'll go, "Oh, that's terrible. Taste that."
Oh yeah, yeah. Or they take something on the fridge. Oh, I think this might be bad. Smell this. No, it's bad. I don't care. No matter what, it smell like petunias. I'm not going to drink it.
Yeah, I'll trust you. It's bad.
Yeah, to me, when somebody says you got to see this movie, it's bad. I'm like, I'm there. I'm gonna watch it.
See, there's gonna come a time, and there's a tipping point, and you're gonna tip. Oh crap! I'm old. I can't waste time on bad movies anymore. I gotta watch B+ or better because I only have a certain amount of time in the world.
Yeah.
And what if I die tomorrow? And the last movie I saw was some terrible Jekyll and Hyde together again. I'm already upset. I don't know what the last movie I watched before the pandemic was. I can't remember what movie it was I watched before the pandemic. But I'm worried it might have been a bad movie.
Happens. The last one I saw was Joker, actually, in theaters. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I dug that. That was pretty good.
It without jumping into a full review, I'd say it was an uneven success. It had some parts that I thought were really good and pretty well done, and then it had some other parts where I thought the people making this movie think they are a lot more clever than they actually are.
Maybe.
I liked it. Okay,
obviously Joaquin Phoenix's performance in it was top shelf.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least in that regard, it's pretty blameless.
Yeah. It's fun, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you truly for coming on here and hanging out. And how much do you guys want to go any longer, or?
It's up to you, man. You got me.
I'm good to go. I'm good to go.
You are actually the boss.
Yeah.
I mean, the interview is objectively terrible, but people might stick with
That's
us.
my audience. They love my objectively terrible style. So. You got any other projects in the back burner that you guys are looking forward to? Maybe after this is completed, that you guys want to get out there.
I'm really just focused on this for the time being. There's always irons in the fire, but as far as my slate, I'm largely dedicated to this for the foreseeable future.
And I have a ton of creator-owned books that are coming out this year. Over the next 12 to 18 months, I have at least 8 creator-owned titles that'll be launching. Most of them have not been announced. The one that has been most recently announced is a book I'm doing with Aftershock called Phantoms on the Scan, which is a limited series. It's another horror story about a group of psychics who discover that their psychic abilities are killing them in horrible ways, and they're trying to discover how to stop that before they are horrifyingly and brutally killed. It's a really grim horror book that I'm excited about that's coming out from Aftershock. And I have from Valiant, I'm doing Shadow Man is launching in April. It got delayed because of the pandemic, but so it's not a creator-owned book, but I'm treating it like a creator-owned book. I'm taking it. I think it was my friend Sam Humphreys who once coined the term, I'm going to write this like I stole it. So I took Shadow Man and I just did what I wanted. I just really just went for broke. It's a completely new take on the character of Shadow Man. If you've read the character and love him, you know that he is sort of this supernatural defender. He's the last bastion between our world and the dead side, which is where everything goes when it dies. And Shadow Man is sort of the warrior that stands between those two worlds. And if you've read that character and love him, you can read the series and love it. If you've never read Shadow Man before, you never read the character, you can pick up any issue of my Shadow Man series, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, any issue, and be completely up to date on that character. Every issue will be a complete story, standalone. and it is some of the stuff I'm writing in the series, especially a few issues down the line, is some of the darkest stuff I've ever written. It's a really dark horror superhero story. I'm really excited about it. I'm glad it's finally coming out. Like I said, in April, the first issue finally hits the stands on that book. And then I have a ton of other books that have not been announced yet. Almost all of them creator owned. And as Blacky said, there's always a number of irons in the fire, so, including some, weirdly, that I might be partnering with this guy again on some other stuff. So,
all right, that sounds good. All those sound amazing. Like I said, you guys, who knows? You guys may get me back into buying comics, especially horror comics, which I have not bought in a very long time.
At least the Cullen Bunn Blacky Shepherd joints.
Yes, definitely. And I will definitely be backing this Reanimator because I'm really looking forward to that. I really want to read where you guys take this story. It sounds good.
Yeah,
it sounds good. Let's see. I'm trying to think of more questions.
We have answered all the questions.
Yeah, you've answered them all.
It's your level of preparation that I admire most.
I'm usually a fly by the seat type of guy where, like, okay, I know I'm doing an interview. Like I did an interview with Adam Marcus with who did Jason Goes to Hell. And I did an interview with director David Weiner of In Search of Darkness documentaries. And I kind of just like go in. With them guys, they like to talk. So I kind of just sit back and listen to them. So I didn't have to ask a lot of questions because they're great guys. They're very interesting. And then like while they're talking, I think of a question and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like out.
Let's just talk. Blacky, did you notice that what he just said was those guys were interesting?
Right.
Not that you guys are very interesting. Trust me, you guys I'm digging everything you guys are saying.
You have gone down this path.
You already said it.
I've totally shot my chance for another interview down the road.
Gone down this path, sir.
I'm a horrible interviewer.
You've destroyed our credibility.
Yeah.
See, I'm used to I do streams on YouTube, and I'm used to like getting these people on there like Gary Cassell, and and it's just things go off the rails. Things go off the rails, and like I'll be trying to like, can we get back on this topic? And they're like, no, we're all the way over here now. And I'm like, what do I do? So it's crazy.
Hey, I tried to turn this into a movie review interview, but
I know
takers. So
yeah.
We just don't want to review your movies. Like we don't want to review Jekyll and Hyde.
Hey,
I'm going to watch that. And I thank you for that recommendation because I will watch it.
It's got, as far as I know, it's the first cinematic appearance of Cassandra Peterson, aka Elvira.
Elvira?
Yeah.
I love Elvira.
Yeah.
Is she Elvira in the movie?
No, she plays nurse. She's got lines, but they don't give her a name. It's Cassandra Peterson and her cleavage are pretty much the draws for her scenes. It's got Tim Thomerson, who's amazing, of Dollman fame amongst other things. It's worth your time. It's terrible, but it's great.
See, you're speaking my language. That sounds amazing to me.
I'm shocked I didn't see this movie at some point, but this sounds like the kind of movie you would rent out of a grocery store VHS rental spot.
Yeah, well, I discovered it on HBO when I was 10 or whatever, and it was just one of those movies. Back then, they didn't have so much content, so they were just playing the same movies over and over and over again. And so I watched it probably 20 times, and then as soon as I was able to find it on first VHS and then DVD, I picked it up.
Oh,
played a DVD, did you? Now that's love.
It is. It is.
I'm definitely gonna have to check this out. And that's bringing it back to H.P. Lovecraft. Speaking of renting movies at grocery stores, I rented the Necronomicon starring Jeffrey Combs at a grocery store.
Did they make a movie called the Necronomicon?
Yes, they did. Yes.
Huh?
It's an anthology. It's an anthology picture.
Oh, really?
And they adapt Cold Air.
Okay.
And a story that has nothing to do with the fungi from Yoggoth that they do. That's sort of their adaptation of the fungi from Yoggoth. I want to say there's a third one, but then Jeffrey Combs plays Lovecraft sneaking into a cult temple to steal a copy of the Necronomicon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
It's not on DVD or Blu-ray, or at least it hasn't been up until recently. It was not.
Okay.
I remember looking for it for some reason. I don't know that it's a great movie, but
yeah, I don't remember it being very well, but I remember
I rented it from the grocery store as well, and somehow I have watched it within the last 5 years, but I don't know how that was because I don't like it. Might be on YouTube. Like
Really?
somebody might have done one of those YouTube
Yeah.
But somewhere I've
seen a lot sometimes like that.
and it's not a full moon movie or anything. But it's that kind of that kind of picture.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up because I've been going through Shudder and just watching all of the obscure horror films, and every now and then you run across a gem.
Yeah.
Not often. But every now and then you run across a gem.
It's true. I like Shudder because, like you said, you can go through it and you just pick one out, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's always fun. Personally, back to the comic book. The book.
What comic book?
Reanimator: The Eternal Lie.
Oh yeah.
Which is still available on Indiegogo, which I will have a link in the description when I post this, so you guys can click on it and go there and back it because it's going to be good.
Yes.
Yes. And these guys are great. They're amazing. You really are interesting. Didn't mean to say that like the other people were more interesting than you guys.
Validation.
You guys, I mean, this is really cool. I've been enjoying this because I've gotten to meet people like you guys, like Cullen and Blacky, that I've never got to meet before, and like with cons shut down and stuff, I don't really get to interact with people. So this is great. I love doing these conversations. I love doing these interviews and learning your guys' story and what you guys got planned, and looking forward to everything.
Yeah, well, good. We are too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people will like the book if you're at all into that kind of story. I think it's a fun, it's a fun story. It's got a lot there's a lot packed into that initial 40 pages.
Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of ideas on the page. Let's put it that way. We put a lot of different concepts into that those 40 pages. And I think it flows pretty well. And Blacky has done some great creature designs. I've told him this time and again. He designs one. There's a scene in the book where I think even in the script I said this creature has been depicted over the years in many ways, and it usually falls on this design concept. Do something different. And Blacky took that.
That's interesting.
Blacky took that line, do something different, and just spewed this monstrosity onto this page.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite image in the book. It's an insane image, what this creature he's designed.
It's one of my prouder moments.
Yeah. I mean, because the creature has been, like I said, it's appeared in numerous iterations, again, movies, role-playing games, board games, comics, but we wanted to do something different, and he delivered in spades on that one.
No, that's good tease.
I'm anxious for it to come out so that I can see people's reactions to it.
And in fact, I think they wanted to tease that, but they wanted to show that page at one point, and I was like, "You're not showing that page until you have to buy a comic to read that." Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of pages in the comic that you just can't see them before you read it. You've got to come upon them, naturally.
Yeah, that's the other thing. When you get this book, do not flip through it. Read the first page and just go forward, because you will spoil some interesting things if you flip through the book.
Yeah, definitely. Like the last 10 or 15 pages.
Yeah, don't go to those.
Basically a spoiler a page, So, you got to be cool about it.
Well, yeah, I would not do that because I when I sit down and read a comic or a book, I don't like to do that. I like to go from page one to the end. I don't like to spoil, and I'm glad that you guys didn't release those images in like a trailer or something because I hate when they do that in movies as well because it's like it spoils a big moment. So I'm looking forward to that, and that was a great tease. I'm really looking to see what you've designed for Cthulhu there.
Well, it's been when in coming up with the marketing material, they our editor asked us, what pages do you think we should release, and it was actually kind of a challenge because it's a pretty efficient script. There's not a lot of fat there, right? So every scene has some meat to it that takes you to the next scene, that takes you to the next scene, and it kind of builds on itself. And so there were only a handful of pages that we were able to put out that didn't spoil something and spoil something major,
Right.
So it was definitely something that we had to be very kind of careful about.
So, I've got a good buddy who is a big reader. I mean, he reads constantly, and he always, when he gets a new book, he reads the very novel, comic, whatever. He reads the last page, the first thing he does. And I was like, why do you do that? I don't understand. And his answer is, it's just too stressful. I get too stressed out reading. I have to know how it's going to end, or I'm just too stressed out the entire time.
Well, man, if he does that to our book, it's going to stress him out worse.
Right.
Worse.
That's crazy. I could never do that. I know people that do that, and I can't do it. If I'm going to read something, it has to be from the beginning. I cannot flip to the end because that just ruins my enjoyment of it. It's like, oh, so that's how it ends, and then I'd have no interest to read it. So I just couldn't do it. My stress levels would go through the roof thinking about reading the end before the beginning. That would get me.
Well, this book will only stress you out in the appropriate ways.
That's good. I love horror, especially like old school horror, and this is like gives you that old school horror vibe from everything. So I'm really looking forward to see what you guys have crafted on this. Truly am.
Well, thank you.
We hope you like it.
Me too. And I thank you guys. I thank you guys for coming on. I think we'll shut down the interview now. It's been almost an hour.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, and you guys please check out Reanimator, The Eternal Lie, and all the great works of Cullen Bunn and Blacky Shepherd here because they got skills that pays the bills. So check them out. And once again, the link to the Indiegogo will be in the description, so you guys can go back it. You guys got any final words you want to say?
Yeah, just check the project out. Thank you for the support. If you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on my website, which is cullenbunn.com, or on Twitter, which is @cullenbunn. And I have an e-newsletter that comes out once a week that's chock full of incredible behind-the-scene information and teases of projects I've got coming up. So check that out as well.
Yeah, and you can find me on Instagram at ArtDevil313 and Twitter at CQShep.
CQShep. Cool. Thank you guys once again, truly. And I hope I didn't offend you guys any because I did not mean to.
Thoroughly.
You did. We're going to have to talk about this. Once
I get in,
that's where the real discussion is going to begin.
Is my offended face.
Thanks so much.